Oh my God. Ryan from Full Throttle Hog on Instagram and YouTube. You've got to check his channel out, not just because he has like cinema quality videos, but you rode through a tornado. Now, on one hand, I want to say, what an unbelievably exciting experience. On the other, you needed new underwear. And on the other, we got to talk about how you got yourself into this mess, man. First of all, I'm glad you're alive and it's good to talk to you.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you as well. It definitely was an experience, one that I don't recommend it. It wasn't planned. It just was one of those things that happened.
Yeah. And you had the cameras rolling, dude. That's what's insane here.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about that is I was 13 miles. Well, at the time, I was 16 miles away from my destination in Plymouth, Minnesota, and there was a storm coming through. I'd already got my rain gear on, and the batteries of my GoPros all were dead. They all went out, and I made the split second decision. There was one exit. I was like, you know what? I can do this real quick. I'm kind of tired. I better do it because I want to get my arrival when I get to my final destination.
Right.
So I pulled over quickly. I swapped out the battery. And because of the storm and the lightning was everywhere, I just hit record and I said, you know what? I'm just going to let it do what it sees, and maybe it'll catch some cool lightning. I had no idea that at that moment, 2 minutes and 59 seconds later, I would be in that tornado.
Okay. So, first of all, it's a good thing it was you because I would have been far too lazy. I'd have been like, nah, I'll wait till I get to, what was it, Minnesota?
Well, I was already in Minnesota. I was just outside Minneapolis, almost to Plymouth.
Okay. So you're close to your destination. We have to talk real quick, though, about what was going on, how you got here. So you called me a couple of weeks before you left, or I called you, whatever. And you're doing this 5,000-mile road trip on your Harley in 3 weeks. Now, first of all, what led you to do that? And we want to talk about some waypoints here, but holy crap, we're going to get into the tornado in just a second here. So why did you do this trip?
So ultimately, about a year and a half ago, I really became addicted to long distance riding. And that first started with my Iron Butt Challenge, that going up through San Francisco and back down to San Diego. I was drawn to that. The trip I took last year, I rode out to Moyers, Oklahoma, and just the experience I was getting from being on the road by myself on a Harley Davidson, and it just being nostalgic, and it was really just good for my soul, and I honestly think it'd be good for anybody's soul. So I had planned this trip as part of a new documentary that I'm filming, which is covering just that, which is to hopefully encourage and inspire more people to take these types of trips, get out
Right.
there, whether it be by yourself or with somebody's, take that distance trip and just book it now because we're not getting any younger.
Right. It's, you don't want to say I wish I would have or I could have. And that's one thing I'll tell you is, some road trips that I've taken, I've really enjoyed. I want to do more long distance. I have a lot of friends in the Biggs Hog chapter and some other various hog chapters here in San Diego, California, which is where Ryan and I are based out of. And they're retired. So they go on a lot of these trips. Now, not quite the length of trip and time that you did, but nonetheless, it's amazing to hear and see these stories on YouTube through these channels and Instagram, like you posted. But I discovered that you were caught in a tornado through Instagram, through your post. You literally just threw it up there. I see this wind and this lightning behind you, and I can tell you're under a bridge because the first time I watched it, I didn't have audio. I don't even remember. It just popped up. Like, it just showed me that Full Throttle Hog is sharing this video. And I about crap my pants watching you. And you must, dude, this is life or death. Like, I thought for a second when I saw the title before, I watched the Instagram video, then I watched it with the audio. Then I watched your YouTube video, which is the full, what is it? 3-4 minutes? No, it's about 6-7 minutes, the full
Right.
YouTube
Yeah.
video.
Yep.
Before the audio, I thought he's exaggerating. No way. And then just barely into that Instagram video and the YouTube video, I went, oh my God, this is serious. This is real. Like, you could have died. Did you
Yeah.
did you did you have the wherewithal to realize that, or was it just you're in the moment and you're just riding it out, not thinking about life or death?
I honestly would tell you with all honesty that there was a moment. There's actually a moment in the clip, the one on both Instagram and on the full length video on YouTube, where I start to explain what's going on. and I quickly closed the screen to my helmet,
The
my
visor. Mm-hmm.
and that's because there was sheet metal and other debris flying down the freeway towards our position. And I thought to myself, oh boy, this is going to get really bad. It was at that moment that I was like, man, am I going to get out of this? The winds were going so strong. I could not put my bike down. Didn't matter which way on the kickstand or which way the bike was facing. It was just in full tilt mode, no matter what I did. It wasn't until a vehicle saw my struggles and came and kind of blocked my bike, used their vehicle to block the wind. And at that particular moment, I know that I was recording, and I was like, okay, I'm underneath this underpass. I've got a helmet on at least, but I did have that feeling of, wow, is this going to be where I end? Is right here in Minnesota? That just mental thought came and went as fast as you could say cat in a hat. And it wasn't until later on that evening, while trying to shut down and go to bed, that I still had that adrenaline dump and thinking, man, that could have gone way worse. And then going one step farther, trying to realize, how did I keep the bike from not falling over and not dropping the bike? Because in the beginning, when the rain, there was rain and lightning before this hit. Like,
well, you can see how heavy that rain is too in the video that you share.
Yes. Yeah. And that was just kind of going on, lighter than that, but it was there, and there was quite a bit of lightning, and it was very close, and that was a little sketchy in itself. But as soon as I hit that moment of, all vehicles are stopped on the roadway, everybody's got their hazards on. We're on a freeway, and similar to like the Interstate 5, if you saw, just because of a storm, everybody just was stopped, parked in all sorts of weird positions. And getting myself underneath that underpass, things just came out of nowhere. You could see the wall coming towards you, and just the way that the rain was falling, and just the intensity from like 300 yards, 200 yards, 100 yards, and then you're just in it. I ended up putting both my feet down. I'm skiing on the side of the bike in the emergency lane because the water is coming so heavily, that I knew I had to get to that underpass and hopefully get my bike in a position to be out of the roadway. And that's what ended up happening.
Okay. So you get under the underpass. First of all, I'm thinking, did you post that video to Instagram before you told your wife?
No, I had already told her what was going on. And my buddy, Danny, who I was going to see in Minnesota during this trip, I knew that things were bad. I didn't know how bad they were because he's calling me. I answer the phone through my helmet, my Senna system. And I said, and immediately he says, "Where are you?"
Right. Like, bro, stay away.
And exactly. And I could tell in the tone in his voice, I could tell. I said, "I'm underneath an underpass." He's like, "There's a tornado." I was like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm in it. I got you. I'm in it. I can verify it." So,
and there's nothing he can do from his end. And I'm sure he felt helpless that his buddy is caught in the middle of this thing on a motorcycle nonetheless.
Absolutely. And he basically said, he's 13 miles away. I traveled at this point over 3,200 miles, and I'm 13 miles away from his house. And I kept powering throughout the day, and we kept, touching base. And the funny thing about this, Clint, is that when I was planning this trip out, you always want to check, especially on a motorcycle, you always want to check all your weather, as you go. You program it in your phone, you're checking it daily, you're trying to see what's going on. We had fires in Arizona, fires in New Mexico. The tornado that I was more concerned with when I was planning this trip was Oklahoma and Arkansas. A buddy of mine's house in Arkansas was hit with a severe storm, and I thought, okay, that is going to be a problem. And then there was going to be snow possibly in Minnesota. Well, after I made it through Oklahoma and Arkansas, I thought I was safe. I thought everything was, a little bit of rain. We all can ride in rain, and that's not a big deal. But it was the fact that the tornado that I was very scared to go into. And don't get me wrong, I bolstered it up a little bit. Like, what are the odds of somebody on a motorcycle actually being in a tornado? So I was bolstering it up in my pre-recording of this trip.
Right, because it's good for hits. It's good for views. Well, I even remember you saying on, I think it was Instagram that I saw this, about your concern about the weather. having no idea that you would actually hit a tornado.
Yes, yeah, and for that, I would tell you it's not something I ever would want to do again. It was a scary experience. The only silver lining is that the cameras were rolling, and I was able to get some of that video.
Okay, so you plan this trip. You're going to see your buddy. It's 5,000 miles. It's 3 weeks. If you're hearing a snort, that's my little French bulldog Harley here, who's just come in to say hello. But man, so I see you post this. You have to go to Full Throttle Hog on YouTube. There's a link here for you that you can click and see that, or just Full Throttle Hog is got it. And I suggest that you subscribe. But when did you know you were in trouble? Like, was it 100 yards from the overpass? Was it, I mean, what?
Yeah,
when did you know I have to get to this overpass? What the hell am I saying?
No, I know exactly what you're saying, and I know exactly the moment that I was at, and it was anywhere between that 200 to 300 yards from, I would say, maybe 100 to 200 yards from that underpass, because you could see that wall. And when I saw you first see people's hazards on, which you know that it's going to be, there's multiple vehicle with their,
like the movies.
Yeah. But the vehicles were still moving just at a very slow pace. So that's when I moved my bike over into the emergency lane, because you have big rigs, you have everything. It was still very crowded area. So I moved over to that emergency lane, and I was like, okay, this is getting really sketchy. And then when that wall, that crosswind, and that the rain coming sideways starts, I mean, it was violent, and it went from just regular wind and rain to a very, very violent rain that I'll never forget, because in that moment, I knew that I have to find cover. I have to find some type of safety, and hopefully I'm able to make it out. And, I have other clips that eventually I will release, but there was also mass flooding. And there's a portion where I drive my bike. There's a vehicle. This is after the tornado, after I leave the underpass. There is a vehicle on a side street that I can see in the distance. It's got its hazards on, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go again. But there's not really any heavier rain. It's just regular rain. And as I get closer to the vehicle, I immediately go into a completely flooded area. I'm up to almost my air filter with water.
Whoa.
The vehicle is up to its door in water. They're stuck. And so I stop the bike, and I have to slowly crawl backwards, little by little, inch by inch. And it took me a while. It took me about 15 minutes to back out of that area and then get back on the road and go a different direction.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it wasn't over after the tornado.
Okay. So here's the thing to give people perspective. I've been caught I was riding up to Josie's hideout before it was actually Josie's. It's in San Isabel, California, past Dudley's Bakery. Some years ago with my ride club. And I remember I think it was 40-mile-an-hour winds. And that was almost pushing us. We were almost riding sideways to not go from east to west towards San Isabel and Josie's. Then it was just called the hideout, so that it wouldn't push us into the oncoming lane of traffic. I mean, there were fence posts coming on the road. There were trees blowing down, and that's 40 miles per hour. Okay, on a motorcycle. That's the hairiest I've ever experienced any kind of wind on my motorcycle. Let's talk about the wind, the miles per hour for you, where you were stuck with this tornado.
So, and 40-mile-an-hour winds is no joke. A 40-mile-an-hour crosswind, especially when you have gusts in between. I dealt with high winds, and I've ridden in high winds, and it's no fun. That's my worst. I hate riding in wind. I can deal with the rain. I can deal with anything. It's just the wind. And when you have wind like that and big rigs passing you, it's all sorts of different mathematical equations you have to do to keep the bike straight. Mm-hmm. So this storm, according to the numbers the next day, the tornado winds where I was at hit 79 miles an hour.
Oh my God, dude, that is insane. In a car, that's insane. In a truck, that's insane. So you're under this underpass. I know you weren't out of it quite, even after that, you had to, you still had some hairy experiences to get to your buddy's house. But in the midst of this, I know there was a guy that pulled over. You're going to see this in his video too, that is a biker, but was in his truck that helped you out. And you had a short conversation with him in the video. You could barely hear you both. What kind of bike do you ride? Oh man, I ride a bit, thumbs. That was pretty funny that you're even asking that question during this. But so the winds hit, you're under this bridge, right? To me, that is the right thing to do. But I noticed comments from people who've been through tornadoes who said it's the wrong thing to do. Here's my thing. What the hell other choice did you have?
Yeah, that's honestly, well, I mean, being from Southern California, we don't have tornadoes. So I didn't really know what to do at the time, except for I'm on a motorcycle. Let me at least try to get some type of coverage around me, maybe to the left, to the right, over my head, because I mean, there's trees everywhere. It's Minnesota. And so that was the one thing I decided to do. On top of that, I'm going with the locals here. All the locals were trying to get as close as they could under that underpass as possible.
Right.
Right.
If they're doing it, why wouldn't you?
Right. So there was so many things going into play. And I figure if anything, I need to get off this bike just in case if debris starts coming down the road, which eventually it does, but I need to get off this bike and using that underpass. And I don't care what they say, because the ones that are telling me that's the worst place for you to be. Let me tell you, the safest place I felt was I walk up the underpass, the cement railing, and go up to that V kind of section at the top. Yep. And that was the safest place that I could have possibly been at that moment. And that's from somebody that was there. Now, whether that's the right or wrong thing to do, they say you have increased winds in the area.
Right, like a vacuum.
Like a vacuum. So be it. That at that moment, that's where I needed to be. And that's where I felt the safest. And, you know,
wedged up there in the corner. And I wonder too, I'm sure you took just a second, because as a rider, I would feel the same way. When you feel like, okay, I might live through this. Now your concern is, what about my bike? Did you think it was going to like float away?
I didn't think it was going to float away. I still was concerned that the truck in front of me was going to move. But I mean, the whole incident only lasted a little less than 4 minutes, the heavy stuff.
Yeah, 4 minutes, dude, when you're in a life or death situation, or fearing for your life, at least, that's, let's translate that to like 2 hours.
Yeah, because you don't know when it's going to stop. Mm-hmm. So it was only about 4 minutes of total time, but my bike is loaded down with all of my gear. I have 2 cinema cameras on there. I've got my GoPros on there. I've got all my luggage. I've got all my gear. Everything is packed onto the bike. So it's already top heavy. And so looking at it from there, I'm like, hey, I'm off the bike. Here's what it is. If the thing falls down, hopefully it still runs, but it never touched the ground at all, which is amazing. But yeah, I mean, I literally was, it's going to sound weird, but after the heavy stuff had passed, there's still a lot of lightning going on in the background, and I'm still waiting for things, because I stayed under that underpass for 40 minutes, even though the heavy stuff only went for 4, because my buddy had let me know, hey, there's another system moving your way that's going to bring some heavy wind and rain. Not a tornado, but earlier in the day, if we just rewind a little bit, when I'm going through Iowa, I'm getting the tornado watch warnings on my phone, like we would get anything else here for flash flooding, right?
Right.
It's actually sending an alert. Well, when that tornado hit, it goes from tornado watch to tornado warning. When it's tornado warning, that's as serious as those things get on your phone. There isn't a tornado now option. It just says tornado warning. On top of that, if you listen to the video, if you go back to the Instagram and you were to turn up your speakers, you can hear the tornado sirens. I've never even heard a tornado siren ever in my life, minus the movies. You hear the sirens going off in the background. And that's when I knew, I was like, okay, this is something that is absolutely serious. I need to wait this out as long as possible. So about 40 minutes is what I spent under there, and then moved on. But yeah.
All right. Well, Ryan, I am glad you're alive. Full Throttle Hog on Instagram, Full Throttle Hog on YouTube. You've got to check the video out. I've got a link in the description below as well. It's much, much better and longer than the little clips I played here for you. It's pretty intense, but man, next trip you take, I don't know, dude, take out like maybe a couple $1 million in life insurance for your poor wife and your daughters.
Right. I think that's going to be your plan.
All right, brother.
All righty.